What does it say on the back of this? It says, if you're worried about your brakes, take it to some gadget who will fix it for you. Oh, great message, kids. Thank you very much. Well, we're going to ignore that totally.
Hat's vorausgesehen, das Echolot hat gewarnt, souverän. Das Whiskyglas in der Hand bis zum Rand. Auf dem Sonnendeck ist der Eisberg zu sehen, majestätisch, bedrohlich und unheimlich schön. Man spürt die Gefahr, doch man kann sie nicht sehen. Terra, Titanic, verloren im Meer. SOS, kommt mir an. Läuft Signale, sieht keiner mehr. Endstation Ozean. Der Gigant
We'll edit that out, I
bäumt
think.
sich stöhnend auf. Die Tänzerin bleibt zurück. Explosion im Maschinenraum. Das letzte Boot hatte Glück. Die Ratten verlassen das sinkende Schiff, doch der Captain im Smoking beachtet sie nicht. Mit dem Glas in der Hand und die Flut löscht das Licht. Terra, Titanic, verloren im Meer.
Right, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us again. What you saw there was a fairly fictionalised and slightly humorous account of what can go wrong when your brakes fail. But nonetheless, brakes do fail, and one of the reasons is either the pads wear out, or in my case, I bought a German bicycle. In Europe, the brakes are the wrong way around for me. So in Europe, the front brake is on the left and the back brake is on the right, which is the opposite of what I'm used to. So these are hydraulic brakes. I swapped the wires around. In so doing, obviously accidentally got brake fluid on the pads, and that's obviously knackered the pads completely, and they need to be changed. Okay, so let's look at how we're going to do that and what we need. Right, okay, we've got everything set up here. Let's take a look at what we're going to need. So the first thing we're going to need is some sort of screwdriver. I've just got a standard cheapo flat screwdriver here. We're going to use that to push the pistons apart. I don't know if I'll need them, but I've got a small set of vice grips. These may be useful for, say, pulling the split pin that holds the pads in place. Definitely will need a set of mouse nose pliers or similar. As an aside, this is my favourite tool. I bought this as a 17th birthday present for about 40 euros, like a lot of money when I was 17, 20 years ago. But a perfect example of when you buy good, you don't buy twice. And a 5mm Allen key. We're also going to need, obviously, replacement brake pads. Now, you can buy Shimano Originals, or you can buy various aftermarket pads. This is just a set that I bought at Decathlon because it happened to be close to where I live and relatively cheap. And we've also got some toilet roll. Now, you will also need some sort of brake cleaning spray or degreaser. I've already done that here and unfortunately ran out, but basically one of the most important things to do before you put the new pads on is to clean the disc. If that had been the case in the first place, then I probably wouldn't be in this mess. Okay, let's take a look at how we do this. Now, there's various types of Shimano disc brake calipers. On most types, you can actually remove the disc pads without having to remove the braking calipers. Unfortunately, that's not the case on mine. If you look here right close up, you'll be able to see the pads are here held in place with this split pin, and there's not a big enough gap on the caliper between here and here to actually remove the pads. So that's a little bit of a problem. So the first thing we're going to do is actually remove the entire caliper. Now there's two ways of doing this on this particular model. You can adjust these points here, which are screws which go in this way, but they actually have float in them, and they're designed to actually align the caliper with the disc. So I don't really want to touch those. There's another two screws here which are serve to just hold the entire caliper on, and there's no movement in those. So if we take those screws off and put them back on again, in theory, everything should go back in the same place. So we're going to take our 5mm Allen key and just undo these two screws. Obviously, this is not the first take, so in this instance, I've already loosened these screws. They may be a bit harder to take off in real life, or the first time, I should say. Two screws off, and the whole caliper should just slide gently off, taking the pads with it. So when we look at the caliper here, we can see quite easily that there's a split pin just holding the entire brake pad set in place. So to get the pads out, we're going to draw them out from the front of the caliper. As I say, on more expensive, better calipers, we wouldn't even have had to have taken it off. You just pull this split pin and pull the calipers out backwards. Anyway, we're going to take our mouse nose pliers and we're going to just gently pull the pin, which should be fairly easy, and in fact was. That's the pin out there for everyone, just a standard split pin. Now usually I'm told you should get a new one, but I don't have one. And then simply pushing a finger here on the back of the pads, gently push it, and they will slide out, as we can see, at the front. Now, I know what these pads look like, bearing in mind they've been saturated with nasty Shimano hydraulic oil. They've also been used, I don't know, 1,000 or so miles, so they're starting to fail anyway. This one in particular has got disintegrated resin along the corners. The other thing we're going to notice if we look at them is that they are slightly worn out in comparison to the amount of resin that's on the brand new ones. But we'll measure that in a minute just to get you an idea. Okay? So we're obviously going to take our new set of pads here from Decathlon, and we're just going to take them out and have a look, see what we've got. And of course, it's put in a box that makes it really difficult to open. You can tell I have not practiced this particular evolution. Oh, come out, you absolute cretin. This is why they don't allow me in the product development sections of companies. Right, okay, there we go, new set, brilliant. Right, so in your pack of replacement pads, you're going to get two pads and a spring. Bear in mind these disc brakes are slightly different to car disc brakes, which tend not to have a spring to push them apart again. Obviously, a little bit of friction on a push bike is much more significant than it would be on a car. If we take a set of vernier calipers and one of our old disc brakes, we can measure the total thickness of the pad and the backing material, and there we go, it comes to 3.62 on that one, 3.62, 3.48, yeah, something like that, 3.6. They're not actually that worn. The main problem with them is that they're saturated with oil. On a brand new one, we get 3.9, 3.95. So we've only worn off about 0.3 of a millimetre. If we then measure the depth remaining on the actual pad surface, it's obviously a pig to measure on camera. Maybe cut that bit out. 1.5, so 1.5 on the old ones, and it's probably about 1.8, 1.9 on the new ones, something like that. And now it's telling us 2.2, but that's probably because I didn't measure it correctly on the first ones. 1.2, oh dear, 2.2. Yes, I see what's happened here. The backing plates are different thickness on the old ones and the new ones. Okay, so the old ones are actually quite a lot less on them than the new ones. Enough of this nonsense. Right, so the next thing to do is being quite careful now. We are going to obviously clean out the caliper and make sure there's no crap in it. This I have already done, so I don't need to do it again. Now, you may also at this point need to retract the two pistons inside with your screwdriver. I have already done that, but I'm going to give you an example. So if I pump this up together, you can just about see the pistons moving in. Now, there are two pistons on this caliper. To get them to move back, just slip your screwdriver through and then just put some weight on the screwdriver on the piston, and it will gently retract just like it would in a car or any other disc brake system. So we're going to make sure that they're fully retracted before we put the pads in. Now, you're also at this point, and I can't emphasize this enough, going to want to clean your disc with some sort of degreaser, which I've just run out of. But just to give you an example of the fact that I have cleaned it, if I wipe it with toilet paper, there's absolutely nothing on it. There's a chance that where I put the old calipers back, there might be a little bit of junk, which there is, but I was quite careful not to use them after I've cleaned the disc. Basically, any kind of oil destroys these discs and pads. Okay, we now come to the next stage, which is to put the new pads on the caliper. So we're going to take both of our new pads here. We're going to get the spring and we're going to put that on one of the pads. Now, try and take care not to actually touch the surface of your pads with your fingers, because if your fingers are greasy, then it's going to knacker the pads before they've even had a chance to work. Put the second pad on, so we get one cohesive unit with the spring in between. It's a bit fiddly when you're trying to film it, but basically that's what you end up with. As you can see, the pads just go like that. Now, you will, as with the screwdriver or tie lever, as we've seen, have retracted both pistons fully, and you'll have to push them back fully because bear in mind the new pads are going to be thicker than the old pads because the old pads were worn and the new pads are not. And then we simply jiggle the assembly into place until it's fully seated home at the back of the caliper, like this. Next thing, take your ideally new split pin, but for whatever reason this didn't come with a new split pin, so I'm going to use the old split pin, and just jiggle the split pin in. So now when we jiggle the pin in, we're going to want it to go between the hole in the left pad here, the spring, and the right hand pad, and out the other side of the caliper. Now, the last time I tried this, it was pretty straightforward. I did have to tap it a little bit just to get it through. Now, at this point, you're going to want to take your pliers and just give a little bit of a bend on the split pin. It doesn't need much, it's just to stop the pin dropping out. As we've seen, on this model of pads, it doesn't matter because the pads can't come out the back of the caliper even if the split pin fails. Okay, final step hopefully is to reattach the caliper. So we've cleaned the disc to make sure the disc is completely clean, and we're just going to gently jiggle the caliper onto the disc, hence the importance of retracting the pistons fully. Now it's seated in place, we're just going to take our two screws, screw them back in, and at this point in theory the caliper will be in the place that it was when we took it off. Of course, theory is one thing and practice is another, so you might get a little bit of squeal if it's slightly misaligned in comparison to where it was, but that is something that you can sort out by adjusting these two screws and allowing the caliper to float into its desired position. We'll just give them the old Ollie Epsom one finger torque, because contrary to common misconception, you do not need to tighten the bejesus out of every single screw. That, in theory, should be job done, home for tea and medals, but proof's in the pudding. Let's go outside and try it. Okay, so the increase in performance was pretty good, probably more than I expected, hence the skid at the end when I grabbed a handful. Just goes to show that maintaining your brakes is a really good thing to do on any vehicle. As ever, many thanks for watching. Comments and thoughts in the area below, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.